All right, we're going to get started. Can you all hear me okay? Yes. Okay, excellent. We have a really packed agenda for this morning. And so I want to get started early and hopefully we'll get finished on time. And we are covering the state of the department. It's my second annual state of the department address. And last year we did it right before resident interviews. And it worked really well to sort of bring everybody up to speed where we are. And we're doing that again this year. Next week is resident interviews. We'll hear a little bit about that. Dr. Rothberg. And so we are going to be up to speed on the state of the department. But in a nutshell, if I cut to the chase, the state of the department is amazing. I could probably stop here, but I don't want to take away everybody else's thunder that's speaking today. And so I guess we'll spend the next hour seeing if you agree with me on this. This is the agenda, packed, 10 people talking quickly, one after another, talk about a whole variety of aspects of our department. I'm going to start by covering an overview of university health and the School of Medicine, and then the department itself in a fairly broad overview. And then Dr. Cashel will talk about the research program in more specifics. Then Dr. Rothberg will talk about the education program and ski lab in more specifics. Dr. Sinclair will cover our EDI program and updates. Then Dr. Saltzman and Fallon will talk about our LS Peary discovery and innovation programs. And like last year, in which we had several of our research faculty give quick updates on their programs. We're doing that again this year with the names you see, and then I'll wrap up at the end. So with that, let's get started. So University Health is in really good shape. As you can see from the slide, had over 2 million patient visits this year, 33% growth over 5 years, $5.3 billion overall expense budget for the health system at large. It continues to grow at a fair clip. As you can see from that top row, we have 2,600 plus nurses in the system and 2,500 advanced practice clinicians, physicians, and surgeons. We have our own health insurance program that has over 250,000 people in it. And you can see from the numbers, the health systems, research, and education missions are flourishing. This is the thing we're probably most proud of, and that is in Vizient's version of ranking of quality. Now, Vizient is kind of a consortium of all the top healthcare centers in the country, about 130, 140. And they have a quality ranking each year. For the last 13 years, we've come in the top 10. There's only one other institution, and I won't mention their name, it's very relevant, that has done that. So we continue to push on quality and safety, and so does everyone else, frankly. So trying to stay in the top 10 is really hard because every year everybody gets better, and yet we've been able to do it, and it's really been a focus of our institution, something we should all be proud of. On the research side, health sciences continues to grow as well. This is the slide I showed last year, showing a steady growth from fiscal year 13 through 21. This is fiscal year 22's data just came out, and we continue to see that steady growth in our research portfolio. And this fits really well with what President Randall, Taylor Randall became our president about 1.5 years ago, and set out a mission to be a top 10 public institution in the country. By his definition and aim, that we should set a goal of $1 billion in research funding for the institution at large by the end of the decade. If we do that and know that health sciences represents about 60% of all of the research funding of the institution, sets the health sciences goal out there at least $600 million. This is the trajectory we're on. I just showed $58 million for fiscal year 22. If we look to the end of the decade, we're actually projecting to be well above that necessary to get our institution to $1 billion in funding, and so that's an attainable goal that it's our hope we will see even sooner than President Randall has suggested. There's been a lot of concerns and challenges over the last few years. For any that missed it, we had a pretty big pandemic. That pandemic affected almost everything in our system, including our courts. As a health system, we have been struggling for that period of time. To some extent, not nearly as much as academic medical centers and other hospitals across the country. We've done quite well in weathering the storm, but nonetheless, we find ourselves in a second challenge beyond just the pandemic and infections and effects on patients, and that is some of our resources are really tight. That includes both physical resources, number of operating rooms, number of inpatient beds, et cetera, as well as personnel resources, number of techs, number of medical assistants, number of nurses, and that is much slower to resolve. But the system is working really hard to do that. That resolution will take time, but they've changed a lot of the structure of human resources to try and meet that challenge. I won't spend too much more time talking about that, but I am going to spend some time talking about how we meet the physical resource challenges we face, because those are quite significant too. Anybody who spent any time in our operating rooms or clinics know that we are full across the system. And the plans to build take time. But I'm going to show you where we are and what we're doing, both near and a little bit farther away. And I'm going to start with some new buildings. This is all system-wide, opening this spring. And the first is the Helix building. That's what it's called, Healthcare Educators, Leaders, and Innovators Complex. It's the building across the street from the Moran that's been going up adjacent to the new clinics and office building that Primary Children's uses, right adjacent to that, near the track station that's across from the Moran. That Helix building will be opening this spring. It is designed as an office building. It's not going to have patients in it. It's going to decant essentially everything else that occurs in 521, the old medical school building. It'll allow that to come down. And so that opens this spring. Alongside that is another brand new building that anybody who's been on the north side of our campus knows and has seen the construction for years. It's a Catherine Kirk Huntsman Cancer Institute expansion, 5th building in the Institute, and it will dramatically increase the number of clinic rooms, inpatient beds, and operating rooms for cancer treatment. We'll offload some of what's going on in Area E, which is cancer related, to allow us to move more of the non-cancer work into those operating rooms. Many of you have likely heard about this. Our med school got a transformational gift of $110 million about 2 years ago from the Eccles family, a set of foundations. And for that, the naming rights for the School of Medicine is now Spencer Fox Eccles School of Medicine. And it will be a transformative gift for our school. And alongside that is significant funding for a new School of Medicine building. Simultaneous with that, and I talked a bit about it last year, is a reformation or transformation of the way medical education is delivered at our School of Medicine, particularly in the first few years of medical school. And I'm not going to spend time talking about that today because we're right in the middle of building discussion, but this is what the building will now look like. It's going to sit right next to the nursing building. See if I can get a pointer up here. So this is the nursing building. This is the nursing parking lot. Behind is the genetics building and library that you can't see, and then the 521 building is right over here, removed already. A sister building to the School of Medicine building is called the Medical Discovery Building. It's going down the hill slightly. This is the Medical Education Building. This is the new Medical Discovery Building right next to the West Pavilion parking terrace. This Discovery Building is going to house an innovation engine, sort of like our Orthopaedic Innovation Center, except for the School of Medicine-wide programs. Patterned off the one that the School of Pharmacy has and the Orthopaedic Center's version of that. We'll retain our Orthopaedic Innovation Center within the walls that we already have, but there's a similar program going on in that building probably in 5 years. Simultaneous with the School of Medicine building, actually slightly before and then during, School of Medicine building going up, The 521 building will be coming down. That's the old School of Medicine building. And this Gantt chart shows what is required, but I wanted to highlight a couple things. One, it's going to be a key for us to get to here from the hospital, because we won't normally walk through the old School of Medicine building, which will be shut down this summer or early fall. And at that point, they're going to start asbestos abatement, and that's going to take a year, almost a year. And once that is completed, then they will take the whole building down, and that will occur between mid-24 and early 25. About the same time the School of Medicine is going up. In fact, if you look at the School of Medicine timeline, again, this is the School of Medicine building with the nursing building, the library, genetics building. The old 521 is going to be an open green space here. And the timeline for that is to start construction in late 23 through 24, into 20 through 25 and into early 26. So that's the plan for that School of Medicine building. Skipping forward to the next major building program, something I've talked about quite a bit with our group, and that's what's going on at West Valley. The West Valley timeline has been pushed a little bit, largely due to some construction and cost issues, but is moving along at quite a fair clip right now. It doesn't look like that anymore. That was the initial conceptual design. This is what the building will really look like. It is a hospital with a helipad on top and an emergency room at the bottom. This is the hospital. This is the entire surgical, they call it surgical podium, but all of the inpatient, outpatient operating rooms and procedure rooms will occur in here, except for some hand procedure rooms that will occur in our clinic. This is the clinic building. And we will have an entire floor for musculoskeletal clinics and therapies. It is connected to the rest of the building system. And then there's a single front entrance that you can go to the hospital, to the surgical suites and radiology, or to the clinics building. And this is what it looks like at ground level. There'll be all glass front with a lot of art and color coming through. This is what it'll look like from one side to the other, and within the front entrance, sort of the public entrance area of the building. Lastly, and this is really new, is a discussion of how to get university hospital capacity up. And there's been a lot of ideas, but this is the one that seems to be sticking. It's in a feasibility phase right now, but it's called the South Tower. And you can see from one or the other of these two possible renditions that there's a view corridor off of the new Nielsen Rehab Hospital that we have to maintain by contract with the Nielsen family, but working around that, attaching a patient space, OR space, beds, and a lot of storage and utilities will be a new South Tower that goes up. The timeline for that is after the demolition. That demolition, again, of 521 has to occur while they're redoing the site, building that green space. They can also start to build the new South Tower that will likely open up in about 5 years. So that's the timeline on the newest of the building concepts that will really allow us to expand our tertiary quaternary care at University Hospital and our trauma care by expanding ORs and inpatient beds. So I'm going to shift dramatically now and talk about us. The Department of Orthopaedics has undergone significant expansion over the last several years. We are now 66 faculty, 5 new faculty in the last year. We have 45 surgeons, 14 PhD scientists, 7 sports medicine doctors, and 52 adjunct faculty, 29 residents, 13 fellows, and 24 APCs. That is our department as it stands at the moment. As you know, we have 2 sort of leading programs that have caught a lot of interest around the campus, and that is our Innovation Center, which we'll hear a little bit more about, and our Ski Lab for Education, which you all are familiar with, and Dr. Robertson spent a little time talking about. We also continued and/or even advanced our relationships with a number of the sports groups in town, both collegiate and professional. In terms of growth, we have continued on a pretty steep trajectory growing about 50% over the last 6 years at a 7.3% annual growth rate. By location, about 37% of our cases are done at University Hospital and Clinical Neuroscience Center, about 29% at the UOC, 26% at Primary Children's. And I'm going to focus for a second on our pediatric program. It's a key element of our entire orthopedic clinical program, and I'll show you why. About 27% of our faculty are pediatric subspecialty trained. About 25% of our cases are done by the rest of our subspecialists on pediatric patients: hand, foot, sarcoma, shoulder, sports, trauma, even joints, as you can see by the numbers on the right. That clinical activity represents nearly a third of our clinical income and our clinical expenses. And the future is near for our pediatric patients as well, as we're in the final throes of this building, the artist rendition of the Lehigh Primary Children's Campus, with the hospital on the upper left picture, looking straight at the hospital, and to the left is the clinics building attached, and we'll have a good space in that clinics building that will be manned by our Utah Valley primary pediatric orthopedics, as well as the primary children's orthopedics in a rotating fashion, orthopedists. Sorry. I'm going to switch gears and talk about orthopedic research. One way to measure our growth and our output is by total expenditures over time. This again is a slide that I showed last year, looking at 2016 through 21, a fairly steady growth in our total research expenditures. Just hot off the presses, 2022 expenditures, and we've taken again a significant jump in growth. This is what that looks like broken down into NIH and other federal grants. A 34% increase this last year by those measures, and doubled over the period of 3 years. So we're on a pretty significant growth clip. Another way to look at us is in Bremer ranking. Blue Ridge Institute ranks by NIH funding, both direct and indirects together, total funding. NIH, all institutions and then departments across the country. In orthopedics, we're in 2020, we were number 10 in the country. Of all orthopedics departments, number 2 amongst public institutions. In the most recent data that came out about 7-8 months ago, we remain number 2 in the public arena and number 11 across the country for all orthopedic departments. Next set of data will come in the spring. As far as some more specifics about our research, we have 6 major themes to our discovery research portfolio, as well as our innovation center, all under sort of the research banner that you're all familiar with. Dr. Kajan's going to go into some detail, but one of the slides that I like to show across the system that gets a lot of attention is following this, to show how much we work and collaborate with others around campus, both in the School of Medicine as well as other schools and colleges across the system. And it's a testament to our group that we reach out and collaborate so broadly. Lastly, I wanted to introduce the newest member of our department, Dr. Harasimovich, Natalia, standing up in the back. She joined us yesterday. And I'll just... Welcome. Dr. Harasimovich is from Poland originally, and was educated through a master's degree in Krakow, Poland, and then spent 4 years in Scotland, University of Edinburgh, got her PhD there, and then spent 6 years at WashU in St. Louis, and did her postdoc, and then was a research instructor, and joins us and our osteoarthritis initiative. Her specialty is in the realm of immunology and the immunologic aspects of osteoarthritis, and she will work in parallel and in concert with Dr. Jernick, and I think is going to be an outstanding addition to our department, so welcome again. And with that, I'm going to pass the baton to Dr. Kaj.
Thanks, Darrell. So I'm going to briefly go over in 5 minutes how the department's been doing in research, and Darrell touched a little bit on this. But the most important thing that I want to address is that, what you're going to see in the slides, it's really a combination of what the work that the residents, fellows, faculty, from the clinical side, from the basic research science side. So it's everyone coming together to be able to actually create what you're going to see on the slide. So this is not a single division or a single element of the department. So take that into mind. So how are we doing overall? Pretty amazing. So if you look at just studies that are being performed, over 300 IRBs are approved, 30 industry-sponsored contracts, over 30 active external grants, and over 20 internal grants. Again, Darrell touched on the NIH funding. We'll review publications. The publications that you'll see here doesn't necessarily include our basic scientists, which we'll include in the next slide. And you can see the overall awards that were granted. In terms of clinical research teams, there's 10 teams. Almost every faculty in this department is part of one of them. Each of them is supported by at least one coordinator. Most teams have residents and fellows. They have students. They have visiting traveling fellows, et cetera, that are participating in the work that they're doing. Each team is typically involved in some element of both basic and clinical research, which is pretty amazing that to have clinical faculty engaged, not just with looking at their own work as a clinician, but also engaging with our basic scientists. And I think that's one of the real strengths of the department. So on one slide, this really depicts from a basic science standpoint what we're trying to do in the department. And you can see it's a lot. And part of it is not to necessarily process this information, but it's a little bit to understand that this is the opportunities that are available within the department for people to be engaged, either clinicians, as faculty, residents, fellows, et cetera. So, looking from the top, Mick Jernick is kind of leading the genetic work, looking at genetics of osteoarthritis. He's funded primarily by the Skaggs Foundation, and he has an R21. We just mentioned Natalia and starting her own brand new lab here, which is going to be wonderful. It's going to be an amazing addition to Mick's work. From a health sciences standpoint, Drs. Martin, Cizik, and we recently hired Dr. Coe to add an economic aspect to their work. And they have been consistently funded through ORF and the NIH, as well as the Skaggs Foundation. Our osseo-integrated prosthetic program has gone on for probably close to 30 years now, dating back to Roy Blabaum and picking this up and then transitioning this project with the work of Serena, really. They have an amazing program. It's extremely well funded through VA merit grants. And I want to focus on this multi-center cooperative study that's really been spearheaded by Serena, and she has done an amazing job to be able to do this. And I really congratulate her on this. It's an amazing opportunity, and it's the amount of work that she spent to be able to get that grant is you just don't understand how much. So she really needs to be congratulated for that. Kevin is still in the process of his U54 grant. From the biomechanics side, Andy Anderson has been consistently funded through the NIH, as well as Heath, both of them looking at both hip and shoulder biomechanics. We're really lucky to have Amy Lenz here. Amy trained with Andy, and she was hired, and she has really done an amazing job to start her lab. She's got over $1 million right now in a very few years of funding. And I want to highlight the fact that she was awarded a KO1 award, which is, again, an amazing accomplishment that not many scientists are able to accomplish. And she's the first in our department. And we really need to, I want to congratulate her publicly for this. And then Dustin Williams and Nick Ashton, they've done an amazing job to consistently have high levels of funding through both the DoD as well as foundation grants. So if we look at our admin team, these are the people that are going to help you to be able to accomplish the things that you need. Rebecca Johnson, she leads the research team, and Ashley Neese is the research manager who really works directly with her, with the coordinators in our department. There's multiple clinical research coordinators, research assistants, et cetera. And from a grants and contracting standpoint, Holly, Nellie, they're the ones right now that are really spearheading this. So if you have issues or you're interested in submitting a grant, either come to me or Rebecca, and we're going to direct you to both Holly and Nellie. So from a grant submitted standpoint, it's pretty amazing. If you look at the trends from 2005 or look to 2022, you just look at the growth that's occurred. And specifically, if you look at federal grants that have been actually submitted, again, it's really been an explosion over the course of the past 5 to 10 years. Similarly, if you look at grants awarded, the trends are the same. There's been a significant increase over the course of the past 15 to 20 years. And we note, again, in federally funded grants, it's been amazing, but we've also been very lucky to have strong support through industry. In terms of publications, you can see everything's going up. The residents and fellows have been doing an amazing job. And similarly, as a department, you can see trends going from 5 years or 7 years ago to the current 100 more grants. So publications. So that's kind of where we are at right now. I'm going to take 30 seconds to just highlight the Pediatric Orthopedic Research Grant. This has been somewhat underutilized, and there's a large source of potential in this. And so I would really emphasize surgeons that are participating in the care of pediatric patients, and similarly, basic scientists who have interest in actually doing work in this area to consider this as an opportunity. There's 2 different types of grants. Scholar grant is for students or residents, $5,000 grant. It's on a rolling cycle, requires an LOI. So you basically have to write up a letter of intent, and then the actual formal, a formal application. And again, these will be on a rolling basis. The investigator research grant, there's 2 levels. There's a $40,000 per year, and there's a $20,000 per year. These can be up to a second year of funding. It's not guaranteed, but they can be applied. You can put in an application for a second year of funding. The $40,000 a year grant, it's on a single cycle. So LOIs are due September 1st, with an understanding applications are November 15th. Only one of those projects will be awarded per year. The $20,000 is a rolling submission, and there's an unlimited number that we can award in the same year. Here are some of the people in our department that have capitalized on this. Nick Kasmers and one of his students get a $5,000 grant. Josh Platt, one of the $40,000 grants. Amy has been great to be able to pursue this, and she recently got awarded a $40,000 grant. And Peter, one of the $20,000 grants. So a lot of opportunity in this area. And with that, I'll hand it over to Dave to talk about education.
All right, good morning. So we start with the ski lab. This is just a table showing hours utilized. So since we've been tracking in July of 20, what you see is that the residents are spending somewhere in the ballpark of each resident about an hour a month in the lab in that first 2-year period. That's doubling. When you look at the numbers, you got to see that this says July to current. So in the first 6-month period, we've already accomplished about the same number of hours in the lab as we had in the entire previous year. So it's significantly more utilized this year and increasing in each year. There's all sorts of different kinds of ways that we use it. The residents typically are using it independently to prepare for cases or explore some avenue of a surgery that they'd like to independently, in large part to the resources that we have and the staff that's there that is so helpful to them. Upcoming and ongoing labs, we use the interns come in and do a boot camp where we have multiple people from the faculty teaching them specific aspects of taking call and getting prepared for their year. We have a high school underrepresented minority outreach lab coming up the weekend after interviews. We have a really cool opportunity coming up in March with the sports division for the Metcalf visiting professor. Dr. LaFosse is coming from France to give an entire Saturday lab and series of lectures to the residents. There's multiple industry annual labs that are utilizing this every single year, as well as the Insall Traveling Fellows. And when you ask Luke Ruodi, our manager of the lab, to give you kind of an update of what's going on in there, the list just keeps getting longer and longer. It's very impressive. The residency in a snapshot. I think there's a lot of things that we see on a day-to-day basis. These are, this is a dashboard that comes from GME, looking at things like wellness, depression, and what you see is that compared to the average residency in the University of Utah, so all residencies, our people are a lot happier, which I think is reflective of the training program, the culture of our program, and the kinds of people that we are recruiting to this program. So what you see is wellness, in the wellness section, that our burnout rate is 16%. That is well below the reported average from GME. Our depression screening is well below the average. And then there's some other components of this that show that, you know, from a scholarly activity, about 70% of our trainees published in the last year, 100% of them are involved in research. There's some other interesting things about our program. 31% of our residents are female. That dwarfs kind of the national average of 15% in residency programs and 7% in practicing orthopedists. And I think that's in large part due to a culture of our program and the way that we treat each other and our trainees over the last couple of decades. With our change in our curriculum, the chief residents in their last 6 months are doing elective time. These are some of the opportunities that they're utilizing. We're doing some aspect of rural rotations that is completely funded by the state, which is very cool. So Jeff's, I believe, in St. George this month. We've got people doing a couple of different international experiences. Luke Myrie is going to be going to Burundi. Kim is going to be going to India and Nepal. Jeff to England, and Alex to France. And so not only are we working in the developing world, but we're also seeing some of the kind of world's leading experts in orthopedics. Our residents will be exposed to their experience. Bob kind of already touched on this, but our average research output for residents was 50 papers last year, almost doubling the year before. They were involved in 70 different conference presentations, so that's an average of 2 per resident, with about 100,000 in resident grants averaging over the last few years. We've got our interviews coming up next week, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, with our rank meeting Friday. This is the group that we're interviewing. We have 7 University of Utah students. We had 8. 1 was military. He's already matched. The remainder of that group will be interviewing another 60 people, 20 of which will have been rotators out of a group of 31, and then 40 outside students that met our criteria for ranking. The total group that we look at is that 34% of the people that we'll be interviewing are women and 13% underrepresented minorities. This is just organically the way it happened when we looked at applications, and it easily doubles what the national average is. So I think that our program is attracting a wide swath of people. When you looked at the total applicant pool, we had 780 total applicants, which is around our average. 254 of them met a kind of a cut down. And so this is the first year that the ERAS, the match, is using something called preference signaling, which you may or may not have heard of. Preference signaling is something where the applicants get 30 programs that they can send a token or a preference signal to, saying, I am more interested in your program than others in the nation. We had about half of our total applicants sent us that. That's a pretty high number. We don't have any data to tell me what all programs are, but from my friends who are program directors around the country, that's a pretty high percentage. So that is also a positive thing for us, and made it so that we looked at or had to do less kind of deep dive on 782 total applicants and only did that on 254. And probably also, as we interview these people next week, have a little bit of a better sense of what their goals are in regards to where they want to be for residency. Okay. So I just want to leave you with a quote that I heard that I thought was interesting. We talk about in our program how the culture of the program is what is amazing, what attracts people to it from a residency standpoint. And I like this. Culture is the behaviors that are rewarded or punished. And I show you a picture of a farm because last year I said culture is great, the program is great, but you have to cultivate that. And so as you think about this, culture is the behaviors that are rewarded and punished. This is how we interact with the residency program and the residents and the trainees, the way that we lift them up when they're doing well and push them down when they're not. That really is what defines that culture, that component of our program that we typically are telling others outside the institution that we're most proud of. So I just want you to think about that as you go about your daily work. Thank you. Next, I'd like to invite Serena Ciclera.
Steve. All right, I am not here to talk about research. So I'm here. Dr. Carol is in Italy, wishing she was here skiing because they have no snow. But she passed the baton to me. She's our chair of our EDI committee. So I'll quickly, because I know we're talk about what the EDI committee has been supporting over the past year. So we have some research scholarships. I won't go into detail. I put them up here, but of importance here is the Medical Student Summer Scholarship. We'll offer 2 this year. Applications are due February 1st. If you know anyone that would be interested in coming here for a summer research program, please have them apply. And then also we are soliciting faculty mentors for that. Please speak to Rebecca if you have a project. They will receive a stipend, including the housing stipend. We also feed them, and they can also assist with things other than research. Last year, we had them do some manual labor for Kristen, and that worked out very well. So little plug there. Also, January 28th, we have our first ski orthopedic outreach lab for a group of high school students from Salt Lake City School District. We need some help with that. We have 5 major stations. We really mirrored this after the LS Peary program, which is a women's female only program that Angela has spearheaded for many years. Because we have these facilities now, we thought it'd be a great opportunity for us to host our own. So this is going to be a diverse group of students coming here for a day on January 28th. And we definitely need some residents. I know we have 2 that are committed. Anne is your contact for that, so please contact her if you want to be here. Breakfast will be served about 9. We'll have 5 different lab stations, as you can see here. And really our goal is to not just highlight surgeons, but really look at the careers that are involved in helping surgery happen. So X-ray tech, PAs, what else do we have up there? Scrub techs. So we really want to highlight that there's more to orthopedic surgery than just being a surgeon. Part of that is we're also creating this ortho careers booklet that we'll work with. Right now we have a lot of stock photos for this or stuff my student pulled off the internet. So if you have anyone on your team that you feel would like to be part of this ortho careers booklet, just drop me an email of their name. Scott Lindsley has been great at taking pictures for our department. I know he'd be happy to stop by, get them in action. We'd really like to highlight our people and not just pull stuff off the internet. So if you see him walking around with a camera, you know, look important and look busy because that's what he's taking these pictures for. But we're going to make this available online with a QR code. We can pass this out around the valley, really all around the state, and really trying to draw people into these careers that we need in order for you guys, for all of us to do our jobs. Lastly, there's 2 multi-specialty grand rounds that have been developed with a focus on EDI. One is April 12th, 2023. Nikki Smith will be here, Utah climber, talking about her experience as a transgender athlete in receiving medical care. And then also February 2024, this is one of our visiting fellows. She will be coming, yes, Valentine's Day 2024. So get those on your calendars, make sure you don't miss those. And with that, I welcome Dr. Saltzman.
I'm here to talk about the Lou Perry programs and to tell you who he is. You'll see his picture when you walk in, you will see him. There's pictures of a lot of old white men all over medical school. So who's Lou Perry and why? You'll see LSP a lot around the department. Who was he? There's a good kid who grew up as a skin of a wealthy family who went to medical school here in the late 30s It was a 2-year medical school. And then they had to go somewhere else for clinical, so he went to Chicago, Rush, and then to Tulane for his training. It was a 3-year training program. And by my math, he was 24 years old when he was done with his orthopedic residency. Wouldn't that be nice? And so he was shipped off to the Burma, China theater for 3 years of probably the most brutal, one of the most brutal parts of World War II. And then he came back, and he was a surgeon, obviously, and he came back and started practice in Ogden. He was the only orthopedic surgeon for Western Colorado, because the train came through up there, Wyoming, Idaho, and northern part of the state of Utah and parts of Nevada. That's it. And he was very active in the local societies, which I'd encourage everyone to do when they get out. And then when he was dying, he asked his daughter to oversee the foundation that he had inherited. And 10 years after his death, Art Swindle, who was created a great ability for this department to leverage resources in the community to do what we're doing, introduced me to his daughter. And over a 5-year period, she developed a plan for research program that's now research and innovation. It's now integrated. It's been the source and the fuel for a lot of the growth that we've had in these areas. Their interest at the start was to restore musculoskeletal function in older patients, basically. So that's why we have a pediatric mirrored program, essentially. And and I've had the privilege now of helping with the discovery program and a bit with the innovation program since this department has become amazing under the leadership of Dr. Brodke. This money is restricted to orthopedic department full-time faculty and residents. It's not, and trainees, I should say. It is not for a collaboration where the PI is in another department. And these are some of the opportunities for training. I think I'm a bit out of order here. We started, let me just go back. We started a long time ago with just 2 levels, and now we have 5 levels. And these, in 2012, we had an academic grant. No, we didn't have any of these. This is completely screwed up. I need a little help from the new chair on how to do this, but I'm going to get right through this. Here's where we are now. We have all these grants. Okay, so we have a M1 summer research traineeship, a scholar grant, which is really for the trainees, both PhD trainees, master's levels, and residents and fellows. Academic grant, which is for faculty, small grants, investigator grant, and an innovative research grant. And I'm going to sort of walk our way through these so you understand this. And this really doesn't apply to the residents here, but to the faculty. If you sponsor a student in the summer, you or your division pays 50% of the student's cost, which now is $5,500 in that range. And then the department puts in 25%, and the LS Perry Foundation puts in 25% to make up the difference. And very happy to do that through the discovery program. For the residents, fellows, and graduate students, there's a mirror program for adults, $5,000, and you just send in your application, no letter of intent, and I'll look at it, and as long as it makes some sense, you might go back and forth with me a little bit, you're going to get the money. And we want you to have the money so you can do what you want to do. Here was our first Ellis Perry Scholar resident. And here's our second one. So I give you a sense of who's famous people have been down this road related to continue an academic career. The academic grant is for full-time orthopedic faculty who are interested in problems that are non-pediatric. Max is $15,000. It's a 1-year program, and you need to be able to complete it in a year. And an example is, and it's a really great example, is this one, which was awarded to Peter Chalmers, who leveraged really about 10 years of work that Bob Tadgen had been doing and identifying problem with rotator cuff healing related to hormone levels, and took and used the money to develop a rat model. I think Casmers was involved in this, and Jerry, I think a bunch of people were involved, and Bob Tadgen were involved in this particular project. And this has now been part of the basis, among a lot of other work, for the first R21, and actually first, to my knowledge, NIH award to a PI who's a clinician, and that's Peter Chalmers. So congratulations for that. That shows that this program can help us move us forward onto the big stage. The next level is the investigator research grant. It's for faculty only. It's for preliminary work to submit for major funding within 3 years. And we're very serious about that part. The max is $100,000. We can't give out many of these. It's a lot of money. It's 20 scholar grants, right? And when you send one in, it'll go out to a panel of expert reviewers, at least 2, that are external to the university, that will give us some information about whether we should fund it and what changes need to be made, et cetera. If no major external award submission is done within 3 years or 5 years from the date of award, then we're not getting 3 years after, or that 5-year period, we're reluctant to give that investigator any more money, basically, because that was the deal. That was the deal we struck when on the way in. I guess in 2027, by then, Dr. Lenz will have submitted multiple grants on the robotic simulator that she's making, simulator she's making. The last is this is where we met with the foundation, and we've now bridged this research program, which we're going to hear about, this innovation program that Wade found, who I'm really privileged to be able to work with, and we all are. We've decided to sort of bridge it with a grant structure, and this is an innovative research grant. It doesn't go out for external review because the ideas are confidential and proprietary, and we can't let anybody know what they are. So we do an internal review, and we may be asking some of the faculty to look at these. The max is $100,000, and it requires an agreement, which maybe you'll speak about, a collaborative agreement, before we can fund it. And the recent example is Doctors Ashton and Williams are developing a topical skin patch to apply before surgery to better eradicate biofilm. And that's basically the summary. And now I'd like to introduce, if you don't know him, Wade Fallon, who's really done an amazing job with this. Thank you.
Thanks, Charlie. Hi, everyone. I'd like to provide a quick update on the Orthopaedic Innovation Center. Find the buttons here. So like with all things in life, it starts with the team. We've got a wonderful team at the Orthopaedic Innovation Center. We have an oversight board, an executive board that's comprised of the current and former chairman, and also the head of the tech transfer office of the university, which is called the Pivot Center. This oversight board participates in selecting the projects that go into the Innovation Center, and then shepherds those projects through our stage gate process that we use to go from concepts and early ideas to things that are clinically ready and FDA approved to be legally marketed in the United States. And then on a day-to-day basis, we have our operational team that drives all the projects, and it's a wonderful team. But I'd like to highlight the 3 gentlemen on the left. They really are the MVPs of the team, and that's Colin Gregerson, Zach Evans, and Austin Hickey. And they are right here, stage left. And it's my great privilege to work with these very accomplished professionals. And if you collaborate at some point with the Orthopaedic Innovation Center, you'll be working directly with one of these folks, because they take leadership roles for all the projects that go through the Orthopaedic Innovation Center. And this is a fun slide. So these are the people who are currently collaborating on active projects with the Orthopaedic Innovation Center. And it's a fun cross-section of the department. When you look across the participants here, There's residents, clinical faculty, research faculty, and even with a small group, we have 6 of the 10 ortho divisions represented. So it'll be fun to watch this grow over time. So I'd like to take just a minute and remind everyone of the resources the department has invested in for innovation, in part funded by the L.S. Perry Foundation, as you heard from Dr. Saltzman. So there's an offsite prototype facility that is really world-class. It contains the latest computer numeric controlled machine tool technology for fabricating really any of the devices that you're currently using in the operating room related to surgical instruments and implant devices. So we have the capability to make any of that in our prototype shop. We've got 3 folks there that together have about 30 years of high-tech manufacturing experience. So that's kind of the center of our cycle that we go through to bring new innovations to clinical readiness. And the department's done a great job at investing in kind of industry-leading hardware and software tools so we can rapidly iterate through the design test cycle and quickly converge on innovations that are design verified, design validated, FDA cleared, and patented. So in addition to this cycle here, we've invested in these tools you see around the periphery of the cycle, including software tools for patent research, computer-aided design, computer-aided manufacturing, and powered up with a team that has many, many decades of experience in manufacturing, development, and commercialization of orthopedic technology. And all of this activity happens within a quality system that we created here within the department that meets the requirements of FDA for developing medical devices, as well as meets the requirements of the International Standards Organization standard for quality systems for medical device development. So if we look back to where we were in terms of project pipeline just a year ago, we had these 5 active projects. And I'd like to show the progress we've made over the last year. So of our kind of 4 most mature projects, we've made great progress on each of them, moving them through our stage gate process towards clinical readiness. Oh, I think this is an older version. That's okay, it'll work. Let me go ahead and get this advanced. So our 4 lead projects that you see here that are the most mature have all advanced multiple stages and all have resulted in patents being issued, which is a great milestone. In fact, the one that's the most mature on the bottom right, the bicortical bone fixation, which goes by the code name the Badger bolt. Anyone heard that term? Just received this patent yesterday. And it was the first patent issued to the university in this calendar year. And then we've added 3 new projects this year. So on the bottom left, we've added this anterior shoulder instability project, which is an all arthroscopic Latarjet type procedure. And then the last 2 projects we added, osteoarthritis therapeutics and the antimicrobial pre-surgical patch, are research projects where we're engaged to help with developing the intellectual property, both from a freedom of operate analysis standpoint, as well as patent protection and finding novelty that we can submit patents on. So with that, I'd like to introduce Kent Bacchus to take us to the next discussion. Thank you.
Okay, so we're now down to the biomechanics lab, and we'll power through this a little bit. So those of you who have been down there, this is what the lab would look like. It's on the A level of the University Orthopaedics Center. So back in 2006, we made a pitch to the DoD and the VA to restore amputees to pre-amputation levels of activities. And the overall long-term vision of that was that we were going to take our knowledge with osseointegration, hips and knees, and develop a device that would have direct skeletal attachment, have a universal release mechanism, and have the capabilities of managing infection and connections. And what this device was a percutaneous device that was osseointegrated, and it would stay in the patient for life. We then would make neural connections with collaborators and attach exoprosthetic limbs. And so early years, it was a kind of a basic science engineering design project. So this is a sheet model where we would amputate a forelimb. We would put in a percutaneous implant, connect it to a simple prosthetic, and then watch the animal over time. And we had these do very successful between 1 and 2 years of the experiment. And that developed enough interest in this process, which frankly, people said would not or could not be done. It made it so that the FDA gave us the ability to look at what they called an early feasibility study. And this is work that Serena Sinclair has picked up on, and that has been working with a FDA multi-center study, taking these transfemoral amputees with this percutaneous device and putting it into multiple facilities across the country, looking for PMA for the FDA approval. So we then were able to leverage that information, and instead of starting back with the very basic science and the translational animal models, we were able to kind of ignore that part because it's already been done. And we have been working to get an early feasibility study set up for the transhumeral patients. And one of the things that we've been spending quite a bit of time the last couple of years have been looking at functional effectiveness studies. We have a grant through the VA merit system that looks at the FDA or FDA guided early feasibility study of the devices. So the plan will be to look at its initial safety in up to 10 patients over time, and look at their functional effectiveness. And so on a lower extremity, the process is pretty straightforward. You kind of run them over a force plate and you can kind of get some good information from that. On the upper extremity, it's a little bit different. So we've been spending quite a bit of time developing systems or processes that we're able to test how well the patient's doing with prosthetic devices. And this is work that has been led by Julia Dunn and with the help of Heath Henninger and a very good colleague, Bo Foreman, and wanted to bring them up to you all as well. So real quickly, where are we going from here? So we've done work on the transfemoral, the transhumeral. I submitted a grant to be looking at essentially transtibial amputees, developing endoprosthetic devices for that group of people. And the latest thing that we're working on, and actually it was where we first started this a long time ago, was trying to develop bone anchored implant for partial hand and digit replacements. And one of the things that I'm working with now is that, I mean, there's so much stuff in this area that you can't be an expert at everything. And so one of the things that has really been useful for us is that we've collaborated with people who are experts. And so one of these experts is Dr. Weir. He's an investigator in Denver, and he makes digits. And our plan is to collaborate, have him make the digits. I put them into cadaver with an osseointegrated implant, and then we develop the preclinical testing of these percutaneous devices. And so that's what I do in a quick nutshell. And I wanted to again thank Keith Henninger, Bo Foreman, and Serena Sinclair for making my life a lot better. And
keep going, or you want
My stuff's not that important, so let's move on. Great, so my group studies orthopedic pathologies through a combination of medical image analysis, motion capture, and computational modeling. And most often, our studies that are kind of within this realm go over and cross into that Venn diagram. So we're doing multiple technologies at once. So I'm just going to skip through all this and actually just go to one slide in particular. So this is our new biplane radiography system that we had installed in 2019, 2020. And what we're doing with this system is kind of what we did with the old system, but we have a lot more room to work. It's really nice equipment, and we're calculating in vivo kinematics. For my work in particular, we're looking at the hip joint in patients with femoral stellar impingement, as well as controls. And so what we do with that information is we're trying to identify form and function relationships. So does the shape of the hip dictate its motion, and does that have an influence on its kinetics, as well as finite element stresses that we hit at the contralateral surface. So we have these patients who come in, we do MR arthrography on them, which you can see there, and then biplane radiography, and then we're starting to use some deep learning to expedite the process of segmentation. We track those images and then get the kinematics from that. We input that to OpenSim to get muscle force estimates. And then we sum up the muscle forces to get the joint reaction force across the hip joint that we then apply to finite element models to predict the stresses at that location. So pass it on.
So when Darrell asked us to sort of summarize the work our group does, I figured this slide sort of says it all. The most obvious thing you see in the lab is the yellow robots. That's the biorobotic simulators. We drive those with human kinematics that come from either Bicon in the top left or biplane floral in the top right. And then we've done a lot of work with the mathematical representations of how you represent the shoulder. And we can visualize that and represent those mathematical solutions, as you see at the bottom left. We've done a number of 2D and 3D anatomic studies, primarily focused on the scapula and the muscles of the rotator cuff. But as a biomechanics lab, we obviously don't abandon the instrument and MTS studies, which are still a core strength of our group. And for about the last 10 years, I've collaborated with Ken and Serena on the osseointegration program. So analysis tools, the shoulder is a bit of the Wild West in terms of hundreds of different ways to analyze how the shoulder moves. Oftentimes, those don't have a great clinical bridge to be able to speak mathematically with what we do on the basic science side to what you actually observe in patients. So the last 5 years, we've really spent a lot of time trying to make those connections and commonize and homogenize how we speak the same languages, so reporting the same data and how we speak the same language. With regard to the simulation, we are driving different kinematics, obviously collected in real people. We can simulate things highly accurately. We can actually capture how different people move, represent that in changes in muscle forces, joint reaction forces, and we've applied that in a number of studies of anatomic and reverse shoulder so far. Regarding kinematics, the first thing we did was obviously study the healthy patients and try to stratify sort of 3 levels of motion: humerothoracic, glenohumeral, and scapulothoracic, and then apply that to the reverse shoulder. And so one of the great findings from the first study was this is the same subject performing scapular plane elevation with and without a handheld weight. And the obvious thing to see is glenohumeral motion essentially disappears. And this isn't every patient, but it's 4 of 10 patients in this small cohort with no sort of a priori knowledge that they have this limitation. And looking back, there's only one study from 2012 that actually even remotely talked about this. and conveniently they excluded 40% of their patients because they couldn't do this. So it seems kind of obvious that we should study these patients rather than exclude them. But we got the cover call for this in November 22. And the follow-on study was looking at internal rotation and adduction, so reaching behind the back. We noted a number of sort of postural, anatomic, range of motion biases that we can't really capture with any clinical modalities at the moment. We're not really looking for them. So this is sort of the motivation for the next wave of grants that's going in. We're currently funding the lab through a number of series of service contracts and co-I grants. And there's a whole series of grants staged to go in. The NIH award that funded all the prior research has expired in 2022. So the renewal is going into March, and then we're stacking up a series of revisions that are going to follow that in each of the next cycles. And with regard to the people, we obviously have to thank all of the kids because they made it all happen. So we graduated 2 PhDs, 2 masters, and a fellow in the last 3 years. We have three staff in the lab right now, Jared, Brodke, and Brittany, who are doing some great work, and obviously the collaborators in the department of university. So I'm going to off to Amy.
I'll be really quick to save on time, but my overall lab mission as a 4th faculty in the orthopedic research lab is to characterize healthy diseased post-surgical foot and ankle morphology and in vivo function, improve clinical treatment of ankle pathologies leading to severe deformity and/or end-stage osteoarthritis. And how we do this? Well, we have 3 major lines of work looking at in vitro robotics, in vivo kinematics, and 3D morphology. All 3 of these areas come together to really ask that form and function question, both in a controlled cadaveric model where you see our integration of the cadaver to the 6-axis industrial robot, in vivo studies with active ongoing evaluation of double heel rise, overground walking. This is also with our brand new biplane fluoro system. And then our 3D morphology piece is characterization of morphology across the spectrum of deformities and subgroups. And that's really expanding a lot, and that's the area of my K1 research. So if you have any questions about this, I'm happy to talk about it more in depth, but here's my team consisting of a senior biomedical engineer, research fellow, 6 grad students, an MD PhD student, 4 medical students, and 3 undergrads. They're an awesome resource across engineering, physics, clinical investigation. It's a real wide, diverse team, so we're here to help too if you have relevant clinical questions. Since I've become faculty a little less than 3 years ago, we've had 18 publications that my team and I have co-authored and contributed to. Here are some main ones, and it's really just a plethora across collaborations internationally and across the globe, of the world too. And we're doing a lot of great work. So there's my external funding. I have K1, as Dr. Towson mentioned right now, and that goes through 2027, which is the morphology development for characterizing ankle osteoarthritis presentation in different types of deformities. I also have in a 4th year extension now, Shriner's grant. I have an industry contact with Paragon, and I'm a mentor on and a Neidler training grant. So that is really great because I'm experiencing what training grants look like for postdoctoral mentorship at another university, and I'm hoping to bring one of those to our department and our university in the future. And then I can't also forget the internal funding that is really helpful from the department, from Peds Ortho, the Ellis Perry, and I also have a VPR School of Medicine C grant right now. And then these are all of the grants that are currently in review. So a lot of federal grants and wonderful collaborations across our department and the university and beyond as well, even all the way with a collaboration that's been ongoing for over 5 years in Switzerland. So that's all. Thank you very much.
Thank you. It's an exhausting list. So in wrap up, you can see an immense amount that's going on in this department, and I'm really proud to be part of this. I wanted to cover one little bit that wasn't mentioned in these presentations. That's the work of the development side of our department. We've got an amazing amount of donated funds. Dr. Salzman did spend a little time on the Ellis Perry portion of this, but it goes well beyond that. We have 18 endowed chairs, which is for a faculty our size, both at the University of Utah and nationally, an amazing number. We've had $4 million in research foundation support just in the last year and a half, and faculty giving of over $1 million. A lot of that is through paycheck donations, and some through outright donations outside of that. And then lastly, something that's truly unique to our department, and that is scholarships that we give to our staff at the Orthopaedics Center. We have about 300 staff at the Orthopaedics Center, and they're all eligible because they work at the Orthopaedics Center for a scholarship program that Art Swindle started about 10 years ago. And this year, we awarded 77 scholarships. In the last 2 years, that donation amount has been, not the donation amount, the award amount has been over $200,000. The corpus, the amount donated that generates this kind of income, is now well over $6 million, specific to our staff getting scholarships to complete their education, whether that's completing associate's degrees, bachelor's degrees, moving forward with advanced degrees. And our staff is available as a staff retention tool, but it's also just something that is part of our core culture, and that's advancement of ourselves and of our staff. I want to hit graduation just to make sure everybody's heard. We're doing that on Friday, June 9th. New location. We're going to be at Bryce Eccles Stadium. And the morning will take place on the first floor of the new club area. That's what the inside looks like, and the outside, direct access to the field. And so we'll spend the morning through midday there. The evening will be 2 floors up in the nicer sort of club suite area. And that's where we'll be celebrating that evening. So I want to just finish by thanking all of you. We have an amazing team. I think Dr. Rothberg really described it well from a culture standpoint. Everybody's contributed to what we saw today. And so I want to personally thank you all. It is absolutely an honor to be part of this. With that, thank you.